My mother didn't even blink when she said it across the dinner table. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The words hit so hard the room actually tilted. I pushed my chair back, feeling every year I'd kept quiet tighten in my chest and said, "Then she can start paying your rent." Forks froze. My father went pale. "Rent? What rent?" He whispered like the truth might swallow him whole. But that moment and the shock, the silence, the fear in his eyes, was nothing compared to what came after. Because the real secret hadn't been revealed yet. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My name is Olivia, and to understand why I didn't scream, you have to know that to them, I wasn't a daughter, I was just an ATM. I didn't slam the door behind me. I closed it with a soft, final click. There was no screaming, no dramatic exit line, just the sound of the latch engaging and the sudden, heavy silence of the front porch. Inside, the faint murmur of confusion lingered, my father asking what I meant, my mother surely already spinning the narrative to make herself the victim. The gravel crunching under my heels sounded like gunfire in the quiet suburban night. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. For the first time in years, my heart wasn't racing with the anxiety of keeping their house of cards standing. It was beating with the slow, rhythmic precision of a clock counting down. The drive back to the city was a blur of highway lights and clarity. Tears would have been inefficient. The radio remained off. I drove with the silence of a vault ceiling shut, my mind already organizing the next steps like project management software. When I unlocked the door to my apartment, the air was cool and smelled of nothing, no expensive candles, no performative dinners, just clean, empty space. My space. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of water, and sat down at my kitchen island. Pacing is a waste of energy. Venting is for people who don't have a plan. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I logged into the corporate banking portal for prestige events. I had the admin credentials because, for the last 4 years, I was the only one who actually looked at the accounts. The dashboard loaded, showing the scheduled transfers for the first of the month. They were all lined up in a neat, green row, ready to drain my personal savings to cover the company's deficit. $4,800 for the rent on the Michigan Avenue office space they insisted on keeping for appearances. $2,000 for the floral retainer. $3,500 for Alexa's creative director salary, a paycheck for a woman who hadn't shown up to the office before noon in 6 months. The cursor hovered over the first line item. Rent. Click. Cancel recurring payment. A dialog box popped up asking if I was sure. The system demanded confirmation. It got it. Next. Alexa's salary. Cancel. Are you sure? Yes. The public relations firm retainer. Cancel. The company credit card autopay, which I funded from my own bonus checks. Cancel. One by one, the green scheduled tags turned to gray terminated markers. It took less than 3 minutes to dismantle the financial life support system I had built for them. I sat back and watched the screen. I expected to feel guilt. I expected that old, familiar panic that the sky was falling. But the sky stayed right where it was. The only thing falling was the illusion. The fan whirred to a stop. In the silence of my kitchen, I realized something profound. I hadn't just canceled some bank transfers. I had canceled my subscription to their dysfunction. I wasn't their daughter anymore, and I certainly wasn't their bank. I was just the operations director, and I had just made the most efficient operational cut of my career. I poured another glass of water and sat back down, staring at the gray, terminated icons on the screen. To anyone else, those were just canceled transactions. To me, they were the autopsy of the last 4 years. I opened a separate spreadsheet, the one I kept hidden in a password-protected folder named The Ledger. It contained every cent I had poured into prestige events since the day my father sat me down and told me they were having a temporary cash flow issue. Temporary. That was the first lie. I scrolled to the bottom of the column. The total sum stared back at me, a number that could have bought a house, funded a startup, or simply allowed me to breathe for a decade. $230,000. That was the price of my admission into this family. For 4 years, I had covered the $4,800 monthly rent for an office space they didn't need but insisted on keeping because optics matter. I had covered the vendor invoices for galas that lost money. I had paid for Alexa's trend research trips to Milan and Paris, which were really just shopping sprees documented in high resolution for her 50,000 followers. Looking at that number, 230,000, I didn't feel generous. I felt used. But more than that, I felt a clinical curiosity about my own behavior. Why did I do it? Why did I let the ink on those checks dry month after month while my mother critiqued my cheap suits and my father ignored my advice? It wasn't because I was stupid. I was a brilliant operations director. I could spot a bleeding asset in a balance sheet from across the room. But when it came to them, I was blind. There is a concept in psychology about the invisible chain that binds the survivor to the source of their pain. It's not loyalty, it's conditioning. Growing up, the rules in our house were simple but unspoken. Alexa was loved for who she was, beautiful, charming, the golden child who shone just by entering a room. I was loved for what I did. My value was transactional. If I brought home straight A's, I earned a smile. If I fixed a problem, I earned a nod. If I was useful, I was safe. I wasn't paying their bills because I was a doormat. I was paying them because I had been trained to believe that utility was the only currency I had. I thought if I just paid enough, if I fixed enough, if I saved them one more time, the transaction would finally settle, and I would be enough. But staring at the screen tonight, the equation finally balanced in my head. It was a scam. The return on investment was never coming. They didn't love me for saving them, they resented me for witnessing their need to be saved. I was the living reminder of their failure, the one who saw the red ink behind the gold curtain. Alexa got to be the visionary because she never had to look at the price tag. I was the one holding the receipt, and tonight, I was finally shredding it. The spreadsheet closed. The invisible chain didn't snap with a dramatic bang. It just dissolved, leaving me sitting in a quiet kitchen with a bank account that was finally, entirely my own. The ledger was closed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for a thank you. I was waiting for the fallout. 3 days later, the silence broke. It didn't break with an apology or a concerned phone call. It broke with the notification ping of a bounced check. The property management company for the Michigan Avenue office had tried to process the rent, and for the first time in 4 years, the funds weren't there. My phone lit up with a text from my mother, Stephanie. Call me. Now. There's a problem with the bank. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, another text. Olivia, the caterer just called. Their retainer didn't go through. This is embarrassing. Fix it. I put my phone on silent and went back to my work, real work, for my own consultancy clients who actually paid me. By noon, the texts had turned into voicemails. I listened to one just to gauge the temperature. My mother's voice was tight, high-pitched, the sound of a woman whose carefully curated reality was springing leaks. I don't know what game you're playing, but this is childish. We have the Anniversary Gala in 3 days. You are putting this family's reputation at risk. Call me back. Then came the social media offensive. Alexa posted a story on Instagram. She was crying, just a single, perfect tear running down her cheek, filtered to look like vintage film. The caption read, "Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hold the knife. Betrayal hurts different when it's family." #heartbroken #jealousy. The likes rolled in, hundreds of people comforting her, validating her victimhood without knowing a single fact. It was a masterclass in deflection. She wasn't worried about the company, she was worried about the narrative. My father, Kenneth, took a different approach. He sent an email to my work address, marked high importance. The subject line was simply, legacy. The body of the email was short and bruising. You are jeopardizing everything we built. This company is your inheritance too. Do not cut off your nose to spite your face. Transfer the funds by close of business or we will have to discuss your future role in this organization. My future role. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. They still thought they held the cards. They thought my silence was a negotiation tactic, a plea for attention. They couldn't conceive of a world where I simply walked away. They believed their own press release, that I was the lucky one, the one allowed to be in their orbit, the one who should be grateful for the privilege of paying their debts. Their escalation wasn't born of fear, it was born of entitlement. They were furious not because they were losing a daughter, but because the ATM had eaten their card. The email went unanswered. The Instagram post went uncommented. The calls went unreturned. I let the voicemails pile up like unread junk mail. Their panic was loud, messy, and public. My response was silence. And in that silence, I felt my resolve harden from anger into something colder, something permanent. They weren't going to learn. They weren't going to apologize. They were going to fight to keep the illusion alive until the bitter end. Fine. If they wanted a fight, I wouldn't give them a shouting match. I would give them a foreclosure. I felt the familiar urge to cave, to fix it just to make the noise stop. But then I looked at the spreadsheet again. $230,000. And I realized I couldn't just walk away. If they were going to burn me down publicly, I needed to make sure I wasn't standing in the ashes alone. I needed armor. I needed proof. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. We'd gone to business school together, and while I'd gone into operations, he'd become a forensic accountant. He was the guy you called when the numbers didn't add up and you suspected someone was cooking the books. Olivia, he answered on the second ring, his voice warm but sharp. Long time. Everything okay? Not really, I said. I need a favor. A big one. I need you to audit prestige events. Tonight. Tonight? Olivia, that's... I have the admin credentials, I interrupted. I need to know exactly where the money went. All of it. Not just the operating expenses. I need to know where the profit went before I started covering the losses. Marcus didn't ask questions. He just asked for the login. 2 hours later, he called me back. His voice was different this time, quieter, professional, grim. Olivia, are you sitting down? Just tell me. It's not just mismanagement, he said. It's embezzlement. Systematic diversion of corporate funds. He walked me through it. For the last 5 years, my father, Kenneth, had been siphoning money out of the company accounts. He'd set up a shell vendor called KA Consultants. Every month, thousands of dollars were transferred there under marketing services. And where does KA Consultants send the money? I asked, though I already felt the sickness rising in my throat. It goes to a personal account, Marcus said. Under Alexa's name. The room spun. It wasn't just that they were bad with money. It wasn't just that they were overspending on galas and appearances. My father was stealing from the company, stealing the money I was putting in, to fund a secret account for my sister. The trend trips, the designer wardrobe, the lifestyle she flaunted on Instagram, it wasn't just funded by the company credit card. It was funded by direct wire transfers of my savings, laundered through a fake vendor. The phone clicked off, and I stared at the wall. The betrayal wasn't emotional anymore, it was criminal. They weren't just a toxic family, they were a criminal enterprise, and I was the mark. There's a concept in sociology about the distinction between having and being. My family was obsessed with a having. They needed to have the status, the clothes, the gala, the appearance of wealth. But they didn't care about it being wealthy, about the actual solvency, the work, the foundation. They were hollow. They believed that if they just had enough of my money, they would eventually be the success they pretended to be. But that's the delusion of the empty wallet. You can rent the lifestyle, but you can't rent the character required to sustain it. When the money stopped, the having evaporated, and there was no being left underneath to hold them up. The audit report Marcus had emailed me sat on my screen, a PDF file, cold and black and white. It was the death certificate of my family. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt dangerous. They wanted a villain? Fine. I printed the report. I put it in a crisp manila folder. The gala was tomorrow night. And I wasn't going to miss it for the world. Saturday night. The 25th Anniversary Gala for Prestige Events. The venue was a ballroom at the Drake Hotel, dripping in crystals and desperation. From the outside, it looked like a triumph. Valet parking was jammed with luxury cars. Photographers were snapping pictures of Chicago's social elite as they entered. Inside, the air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against the heat of 500 bodies and the palpable tension radiating from my family. I arrived late. Deliberately. I wasn't wearing my usual worker bee, a black blazer and sensible heels. I wore a red suit, sharp, tailored, unapologetic. It was the color of a warning sign. It was the color of the ink on their balance sheet. As I walked into the ballroom, heads turned. Not because I was famous, but because for the first time, I wasn't hugging the walls. I walked straight through the center of the room, past the champagne tower, past the ice sculpture of a swan, straight toward the VIP holding area where I knew my mother would be hiding. Stephanie was there, pacing. Her dress was silver, shimmering under the lights, but up close, her makeup was cracking under the strain of a smile she'd been holding for 3 hours. When she saw me, her relief was instant and terrifying. Thank God, she breathed, rushing toward me. The caterer is threatening to pack up before the main course. He needs the final deposit check. Write it now. She held out a pen like a weapon. And fix your face. You look like you're going to court, not a party. I didn't take the pen. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she didn't see me at all. She saw an ATM in a pantsuit. I'm not writing any checks, Mother, I said, my voice low and steady over the hum of the string quartet outside. I canceled the transfers days ago. You knew this. Don't be ridiculous, she hissed, glancing at the door to ensure no donors were watching. This is the Anniversary Gala. We have sponsors here. We have press. Just write the check and we can discuss your little tantrum later. My tantrum? I smiled, and it felt sharp. I'm not here to save the catering, Mother. I'm here for the presentation. What presentation? Her eyes narrowed. Alexa is doing the visionary speech. You're just the help? I finished for her. Not tonight. I turned and walked out of the room before she could grab my arm. Behind me, the gasp she let out was a sound of genuine fear. She knew. Deep down, beneath the layers of denial and hairspray, she knew the bill had finally come due. I walked to the AV booth at the back of the ballroom. The technician, a guy named Dave I'd hired 3 years ago, looked up. Hey, Olivia. You got the updated slides for the operations update? I do, I said, handing him a USB drive. Load this. It replaces the entire deck. You sure? Alexa sent her own file. I'm the operations director, Dave. I sign the checks. Load it. He shrugged and plugged it in. I watched the progress bar fill up. 100%. Done. The weapon was armed. I walked to the side of the stage and waited. The lights dimmed. The room went quiet. My father took the microphone, beaming with the charisma of a man who believes his own con. He introduced Alexa as the heart and soul of Prestige Events. She glided onto the stage in a gown that cost more than my first car, a gown paid for by KA Consultants. She started her speech about dreams and legacy. I let her finish. I let her soak in the applause. I let her make a snide joke about people who don't believe in the magic of what we do. And then, as the applause died down, I stepped out from the shadows. I didn't need a microphone. I walked to the podium, gently moved Alexa aside, and signaled Dave. Good evening, I said into the silence. I'm Olivia, the operations director. And I have a slightly different update on our legacy. The screen behind me flickered to life. There was no music, no fancy transitions, just the stark, brutal clarity of a high-resolution graph projected 10 feet tall. 2 lines cut across the white background. One was a steady, climbing blue line. The other was a jagged, steep red line that crashed into the x-axis 4 years ago and flatlined. This, I gestured to the screen, my voice amplified and clear, is the true state of our legacy. I know we love to talk about vision and dreams, but I prefer to talk about solvency. The room was deadly silent. I could see my father starting to move toward the stage, his face a mask of panic, but the crowd was too dense, and the shock was too thick. He was frozen in the amber of his own making. The blue line represents the company you see tonight, I continued, tracing the air with my hand. It represents the galas, the office on Michigan Avenue, the vendor payments, and the creative director's salary. It looks healthy. It looks successful. I paused, letting the image sink in. But the blue line is artificial. It is entirely funded by external capital injections. My capital injections. I signaled Dave. The slide changed. A list of wire transfers appeared, scrolling down the screen like the credits of a movie. Dates. Amounts. My name as the sender. The total sum at the bottom, $230,000. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I saw donors whispering. I saw competitors leaning in. Now, let's look at the red line, I said, my voice dropping an octave. This was the counterfactual twist. The red line is the actual revenue of prestige events without my personal funding. Notice where it ends? It hit 0 4 years ago. In a world without my intervention, this gala isn't happening. In that world, the office was evicted in 2020. In that world, the vendors sued for non-payment. In that world, my sister isn't standing here in a $10,000 gown accepting an award, she is unemployed. I looked directly at Alexa. She was trembling, clutching her award like it might shield her from the data. You aren't the visionary, Alexa. You're the beneficiary. And I'm the trust fund. Olivia, stop. My mother shrieked from the side, her voice cracking with hysteria. Cut the mic. Dave, cut the mic. Dave didn't move. He was enjoying this too much. I'm almost done, I said calmly. Because there is one final variable in this equation. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen changed to the forensic audit report Marcus had sent me. It showed the side-by-side comparison, my deposits going in, and the immediate transfers going out to KA consultants. And then, the bank records linking KA consultants directly to Alexa's personal checking account. For years, I thought I was paying to keep the lights on, I said to the room, though I was speaking only to my father. But I wasn't. I was paying for a lifestyle. Every time I covered payroll, you siphoned the profits to fund a fantasy. You stole from the company, you stole from me, to pretend she was a star. The revelation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't just embarrassment, it was evidence. I saw the realization hit the room. They weren't looking at a successful family anymore. They were looking at frauds. Effective immediately, I am resigning as operations director, I said, placing the clicker gently on the podium. And I am taking the blue line with me. The funding stops tonight. I looked at the graph one last time. Welcome to the red line. I walked off the stage and straight out of the ballroom. I didn't look back at the chaos erupting behind me, the donors demanding answers, the competitors texting their partners, my mother screaming at my father. I didn't stop when I heard Kenneth calling my name, his voice cracking with a desperation I had never heard before. I just kept walking, past the ice sculpture that was now melting into a shapeless puddle, past the valet who handed me my keys with a stunned expression, and out into the cool Chicago night. My phone started vibrating in my purse before I even reached my car. It buzzed against my hip like a frantic heartbeat. I took it out, looked at the screen, 17 missed calls from my mother in 2 minutes, and held down the power button. The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the sound of a contract expiring. The collapse wasn't a slow fade, it was a landslide. Without my capital injections, the company didn't last the quarter. Prestige Events filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 3 weeks after the gala. The forensic audit I had commissioned became Exhibit A in the fraud investigation launched by the state attorney against my father. It turns out, embezzling funds to hide insolvency isn't just bad business, it's a felony. Alexa tried to spin it, of course. She posted a tearful video about being blindsided by family drama, trying to distance herself from the wreckage. But the receipts were out there. The internet is forever, and the image of those wire transfers, money stolen from the company to buy her influence, was branded onto her reputation. She lost her followers, her sponsors, and eventually, the lease on her apartment. The last I heard, she was living in the guest room of a friend who was rapidly losing patience. As for me, I am sitting in an office on the west side. It's smaller than the one on Michigan Avenue. There is no marble in the lobby, and the furniture is functional, not designer. But the name on the door is mine. Olivia Vance Consultancy. And the numbers on the balance sheet are real. I took a sip of my coffee and watched the morning sun hit the brick wall across the alley. For years, I thought I was paying for love. I thought that if I could just keep the lights on for them, they would eventually see me standing in the room. But you can't buy vision for the blind, and you can't buy loyalty from people who only see you as a resource. I opened my banking app. The balance was positive. The scheduled transfers tab was empty. Losing them didn't feel like a loss. It felt like an eviction. I had finally cleared the squatters out of my life, and for the first time, I had room to breathe. The red line was their problem now. I was finally in the black. If you've ever had to audit your own life to find your freedom, hit that subscribe button. We are rewriting the narrative, one story at a time.